What's happening? Happy Friday to all of you. Thanks for joining me as always. It is very much appreciated. Best day of the week. Fantastic outside. Going to be gorgeous weather. Hopefully later on you go and enjoy it. All right, let's talk about the Patriots defense, shall we? Patriots likely are going to lean on their defense and the run game. At least that's my expectation. We know Alex Van Pelt in Cleveland, Kevin Stefanski, they ran the football an awful lot in the first early downs there, first and second down, and then would throw on third down. Doesn't mean they don't throw on early downs. It's just compared to the rest of the NFL, they did not throw the football a ton on first and second down with their offense. Now, of course, Van Pelt can tweak that, but I would anticipate year one, early on, run game and defense to kind of get this team settled. That's my expectation. And the defense last year, as we know, I've said this plenty of times on this podcast, the defense last year was 9th in DVOA. And I'll give you some context because some people say, what's DVOA? Does that even matter? How about other statistics? DVOA looks at league averages, they look at schedule, and then they tell you where that defense should lie within the league. And so the Patriots last year, they were 9th in DVOA, okay, defensively. But let's add some context to it. Mike Reese wrote recently at ESPN about last year's defense. They allowed an average of 3.3 yards per rush, the lowest mark in the league and lowest in franchise history since the AFL-NFL merger in 1970. So literally, the best run defense that we have seen when you look at yards per rush in 50 years. The unit finished 7th in the NFL in fewest yards allowed, 5th in fewest first downs allowed, and 6th in third down efficiency. So they were great against the run. They limited yards. They limited first downs. And they were fantastic on third down. That's how the Patriots defense won last year. Their matchups. I don't mean win games. I mean, that's how they won the matchup against the offense. So this was a very, very good defense a year ago, which leads us to today's question. Do you think the Patriots defense will be a top 5 defense in 2024? Do you think they're going to be better than they were last year to the point of being a top 5 defense? Now, there is an argument for that, and it's a clear argument. A few points. You are bringing back Christian Gonzalez and Matthew Judon. And one would think that adding a cornerback one, somebody who should be able to shut down most NFL wide receivers, especially most wide receiver ones, you would think that would help your defense, right? And Gonzalez went out in the first month or so of the season last year. To get Gonzalez back, to have the ability to shut down part of the field is huge. So if Gonzalez stays healthy, they have a cornerback one, a true shutdown corner that helps the defense. You also have Matthew Judon coming back, unless there's a trade, which we have to leave the door open. I don't think a trade is going to happen, but I think it's a possibility. If Judon and the Patriots can't agree on a contract extension, I wouldn't be shocked if Judon is dealt. But let's say, for the sake of this argument, that Judon is back. He's a Patriot. He's ready to roll in 2024. So to bring back a shutdown corner, to bring back one of the best edge players in the NFL, that is obviously going to help your defense. That is going to make your defense better. Christian Barmore, he was fantastic in the final 2 months of last season. We should expect Barmore, especially after getting paid, we should expect Barmore to step up even more this season. We should anticipate Barmore being one of the best 5 to 10 interior defensive linemen in the game. And I would not be surprised if he ends up being one of the top 5 interior defensive linemen in the game. So shutdown corner coming back. One of the best edge players in the NFL coming back. Barmore taking that next step in being a top 5 to 10 interior defensive lineman. All of this is good. And all of this would lead you to believe the Patriots will have a top 5 defense this year. I also think the linebackers are underrated. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they are terrific. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they're unbelievable, but they are underrated. Juwan Bentley is an underrated football player. He might be a little bit old school. Tavai might be a little bit old school, but they're still very good, and they're still productive. And Tavai can play some of the edge as we saw last year. So I like Tavai. I like Bentley. And their secondary depth with Gonzalez coming back is really good. I mean, if you look at this, Alex Austin had a good mandatory minicamp. Hopefully that continues in training camp. About a month from now, if Austin continues to play the way he played at minicamp, we're going to sit there and we're going to talk about Christian Gonzalez on one outside cornerback spot and Alex Austin at the other outside cornerback spot. If Austin can hold that down, now you have Jonathan Jones at your disposal. You can slide him into the slot, which is perfect. Mwah, chef's kiss. Then you have Marcus Jones to throw out there at free safety every once in a while. You could throw Jonathan Jones at free safety every once in a while. Jalen Hawkins is somebody we have to keep an eye on. We talked about him about a week or two ago on this podcast. Jalen Hawkins getting plenty of snaps at safety during minicamp, and he looked like he was ready for the role. We'll see how he goes into training camp, how he feels, how he looks. But if Jalen Hawkins can give you some snaps at free safety, that would help address one of the bigger holes we've talked about all offseason. You also have Isaiah Bolden that you can throw out there, who I think, as long as he has a decent camp, is going to make this team. You have Peppers, you have Duggar. You can play them closer to the line of scrimmage if you have Hawkins and Marcus Jones and Jonathan Jones with the capability of playing on the deep end. So you start to look at this secondary and how it all comes together. It's pretty deep, and it's pretty damn talented. Christian Gonzalez makes a huge difference. Alex Austin makes a big difference. I mean, you compare this to last year. You had Jack Jones. You had to get rid of him during the season. You had the J.C. Jackson experiment that did not work out well. But the fact that you have Christian Gonzalez coming back, healthy, fingers crossed, and you have Austin on this team, who you did not have on the team last year until late into the season, that's like acquiring two new cornerbacks. And if Austin can do good enough where you can help him on that side, he doesn't have to lock down guys, right? Outside cornerback 2 is going to get some help. You've got Gonzo. Gonzo's fine on the opposite side. If you get Austin playing at a level where he's capable of playing at a pretty significant rate with some help added when he needs that help, well, now you feel good about cornerback. You've got two young cornerbacks ready to roll. So the secondary depth is something that we should not overlook. While we talk about this Patriots defense, whether or not we think they're going to be a top 5 D in the NFL in 2024, don't forget to take a second of your time as you're watching, listening, to give us that thumbs up on YouTube. That helps us beat the algorithm up. We had a pretty good jump over the last 24 hours in subscribers. Let's keep that moving. So click that thumbs up. Costs you nothing. Throw in a comment. Don't forget to subscribe while you're here. Rate and review on Spotify and Apple Pods. So we talk about the secondary. There's depth. We talk about the linebacker spot. Underrated. Right? And then we look at Barmore, the interior defensive line. But we have to look at the defensive line as a whole, not just with Judon, not just with Barmore, but the entirety of that D-line. The fact is, first and second level, the Patriots have versatility up front. They have the ability to move guys around. Wise can move around. Keon White can move around. You can put Jelani Tavai on the edge if you want to. You have the sub-pass rusher in Joshua Uche that you throw out there. There's a lot of different things that you can do defensively, especially in that front seven. Marte Mapu can play safety. Haven't even brought him up. He can play safety for you. He can also come up towards the line of scrimmage and play linebacker. You know, we sit here and we see the idea of, well, Bentley and Tavai might not be the best linebackers as far as speed goes, which is something that David brings up. I think we need more speed at the linebacker position. I wouldn't disagree with that, but I think you've got some speed this year. Sion Taki is very good in coverage. I think he will amp up that athleticism, and he will be able to cover certain guys that when you look back in past years, you didn't have that capability. So I think Taki helps your athleticism on the second level. Marte Mapu can come up and play in the second level. He will help your athleticism. So you have options. You go back 3 years ago, the Patriots had no options when it came to speed on the second level. They had pretty much nothing. Well, now you have at least a couple of guys you can throw out there, and you feel like they won't lose their ass in coverage, and they can go sideline to sideline. So you have that versatility up front with the defensive line, the parts that can interchange. You've got linebackers that can interchange. You've got some sub guys that can come in and out of the lineup. And you have the safeties that are really hybrid safeties with Duggar and Peppers. Duggar and Peppers, both of those guys can play at times a quasi linebacker role, which again helps the athleticism and the speed on that level. So I think the Patriots, compared to 3 or 4 years ago, they're a much different defense because they do have that element of speed to it, which is something that was really, really missing from the equation. And I think we now have players that could be sprinkled in that will help that situation. Finally, about this defense, they're great tackling. Aaron Schatz tweeted this: the Patriots have ranked in the bottom 5 for broken tackles for 7 straight seasons. And then he thought that would confuse some people the way he worded it. So in parentheses, he put, in other words, they are the best tackling defense in the NFL. The Patriots are the best tackling defense in the NFL, going on 6-7 years. So they limit yards after the carry, right? Yards after contact. They limit yards after the catch. They wrap up. They don't give up 25, 30-yard plays when they possibly could. They only give up 10-yard plays, 8-yard plays. So they are very fundamentally sound when it comes to tackling. Doesn't mean they're flawless. We've seen games. We've seen stretches. We've seen players struggle in tackling. Not telling you they're perfect, but compared to the rest of the NFL, they're a very, very, very good tackling team. So plenty of reasons why this defense could be top 5 in 2024. But I'm actually leaning against them finishing in the top 5. I want to see how they look without Bill. This is not to say that Bill Belichick is the only reason why the defense has been good. But it certainly doesn't hurt, to have Belichick, the possibly greatest defensive mind in the history of football. At least he's one of the greatest defensive minds in football. It doesn't hurt to have that guy preparing your defense, game planning week in and week out, finding weaknesses, paying attention to the smallest, tiniest details. And now you don't have that. You don't have Bill. You don't have Bill watching this saying, I remember in 1975, a team ran this play, and this is how you stopped it. So you've got to account for Bill Belichick's absence in the room. I don't think it's the end-all, be-all. I don't think it crushes this defense. I'm not panicked by any means, but Bill Belichick could be the difference between your defense being in the top 10 versus the top 5 because of those details, because of that preparation, because of the knowledge, just the wealth of knowledge that he brought. So we have to account for that. We also have to account that the Patriots will have a first-time NFL defensive coordinator calling the plays. Again, I'm not panicked. I wanted DeMarcus Covington to get this job. I thought he was the right guy for the job. But we also have to understand it's the first time he's doing this job, and it might take him a little time to figure some things out. So as a first-time play caller on that side of the football, you have the learning curve that you have to appreciate. So you've got Covington figuring out how to be a DC, and you don't have Bill Belichick anymore to make sure everything is buttoned up on that side of the football. If Covington is having some issues, Bill could slide in and say, how about this, how about that? You don't have that anymore. I'm sure Steve Belichick leaned on his dad a number of times as he was learning the play calling process. So Covington, he's going to have a little bit of a catch-up here. So you don't have Bill, and you're working with a first-time defensive coordinator. Those are things we cannot overlook. We also cannot overlook this schedule. Even if the Patriots defense is better this year than it was last year, you have to account for the schedule. The schedule is so tough. A murderer's row of quarterbacks. I've been talking about this since the end of the last season, right? The idea of all of these quarterbacks that you're facing, all of these offenses that you're facing, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, the Miami offense, the San Francisco offense. It goes on and on and on. You are facing a very, very difficult schedule this year. You are facing a number of top quarterbacks in the league. Haven't even mentioned Josh Allen twice, Aaron Rodgers twice, Caleb Williams in that Chicago offense. So you are facing just a ton of talent as the Patriots defense in 2024. And we have to appreciate that. So with Bill gone, with a first-time defensive coordinator, and with this schedule, I am leaning against a top 5 defense in 2024. I think they will finish outside of the top 5. With all of that said, I do think the Patriots will be a top 10 defense. And I would not be surprised if they finish just outside the top 5. I wouldn't be surprised if they finished as, the 7th or 8th best defense in football. I just don't think they'll be in that top 5 discussion there in the top 3 to 5 because of the reasons I just mentioned. I have a lot of respect for Belichick and his defensive mind. I have a lot of respect for how hard it is to be a first-time coordinator. And I appreciate the hell out of this schedule that the Patriots are set to face. All right, more Patriots thoughts in a minute. Don't forget, take a second of your time. Give us that thumbs up. Pound that like button. That's how we get the best of the YouTube algorithm. The only way we're going to drive this podcast as we get ready for the Patriots exclusive pod starting on July 8th. The only way we're going to drive this community and get some momentum is by liking the podcast with that thumbs up, commenting on the podcast, and subscribing to the podcast. That's how we do it. Spotify, Apple Pods, you can help us by rating this episode and reviewing this episode. Always appreciate you out there. And if you are at Spotify, Apple Pods, don't forget, you can slide on over to YouTube to give us that thumbs up, drop a comment, and to subscribe. A reminder, next week, no podcasts. We are off for next week. You can hear me on 98.5 Sunday afternoon. I'll be on 2 to 5 on Sunday. July 3rd, if you have no 4th of July plans on July 3rd night, I'm your guy, 7 to 11 on 98.5. And then I'll be on the morning show Friday morning, 6 a.m., 10 a.m., July 5th with Ryan Johnston and Kendra Middleton. But no podcasts next week. We ramp up. We get ready to go Patriots exclusive for July 8th, Monday, July 8th. We go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 episodes per week, 11 a.m. live on YouTube, all Patriots, all the time. If you want Celtics, if you want Red Sox, if you want Bruins, check me out on 98.5 and check out the Patreon page, $5 a month. All right. I saw a comment from David. Here's David again, getting some love this morning. I'd give up a 2nd and 4th for Brandon Aiyuk right now. Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad deal. I don't think San Francisco would take that deal. But I have said before, I think Aiyuk is worth a 2nd-round pick. And if I'm giving up a 2nd and a 4th, I would want to pick back from San Francisco, whether that's a 5th or a 6th. But I think it's, that's a fair deal, at least a starting point. I don't think San Francisco is going to give Aiyuk up for that. Speaking of Aiyuk, we've spent a lot of time on him over the last couple of months. And all of you know that I love him. Love him as a football player. He's 26 years old. He's just getting into his prime. He has proven that he can beat coverage, which is obviously vital. If you want a wide receiver 1, he's got to beat that coverage on the backside. He has shown that he can do that. He is really your prototypical X-receiver, which is what the Patriots still need. Javon Baker might end up being that guy, but I'm not putting all the eggs in the Javon Baker basket. You still need an X receiver in this offense. KJ Osborne can play X. I'm not betting on him. Jalen Polk, more of a Z, but he can play some X. I don't think he's going to play a ton of X. So you still need that bona fide, legit one guy on the outside. And Aiyuk averaged almost 18 yards a catch last year, 17.9 yards per reception. This is a big play waiting to happen. I mean, he's precisely what the Patriots offense needs. And here's something else. Is he actually better than we think? We look at his statistics. We talk about the 18 yards per catch. We talk about 26 years old, walking into his prime. The idea that he can beat coverage. But he might be better than his numbers tell us that he is. Warren Sharp posted this on Aiyuk the other day. Important context if you're comparing Aiyuk stats to other wide receivers. Since San Francisco traded for Christian McCaffrey, the 49ers throw the ball at the number 32 rate in the NFL. So since Run CMC has been in San Francisco, they have thrown the ball at a rate the very bottom of the league. The 49ers throw the football on only 51.8% of their offensive snaps. And by the way, not only do they not throw the football a ton at the very bottom of the league when it comes to rate, they've also called only 1,643 offensive snaps since trading for Run CMC, which is 28th in the league. So when you look at the 49ers offense, they don't throw the football a ton, and they actually don't have a ton of snaps. They don't run a lot of plays. Since CMC has been there, the run rate has gone up, and the plays have gone down. Now, Sharp posts, compare that to Justin Jefferson's Vikings. Minnesota, they're second in pass rate. So San Francisco throws the football roughly 52% of the time. Minnesota throws the football 66% of the time. A gigantic jump. The Niners, 28th in offensive snaps since Run CMC has been out there in the Bay. You compare that to Minnesota, they're fourth in total offensive snaps. So Minnesota, they throw the ball more, and they've run more plays. Many more plays. And throw the football a lot more than the Niners. So it stands to reason that Justin Jefferson's numbers, just based off of those two facts, Jefferson's numbers are going to be better because he has more opportunity. He has more opportunity for receptions and yards and touchdowns because he plays within an offense that is throwing the football a ton and is running a lot of plays. There have been, again, according to Warren Sharp, there have been 28 receivers with 100-plus catches the last 1.5 years. Out of those 28 receivers on a per-game basis, Justin Jefferson gets 10.5 targets per game. That's the second most in the league. He has just over 7 catches per game, which is fourth in the league. Aiyuk, he only averages 6.5 targets. The last year and a half, Aiyuk is getting only 6.5 targets per game, which puts him 28th. 28 out of 28 receivers on a per-game basis. Out of those 28 receivers with 100-plus catches. So when you look at guys that have, 28 wide receivers with 100 catches the last year and a half, and you look at Jefferson versus Aiyuk, Jefferson is getting 4 more targets per game. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. And by the way, I see you, Walt Licker, in the chat. Check out the podcast from yesterday. We went all into the Mike Onwenu story. You're asking David. David's popping in. Check out yesterday's pod. We went deep into the Mike Onwenu situation, the report from Greg Bedard, talked to a couple of sources and what those sources had to say. So when you compare Aiyuk to the best receiver in the game, Aiyuk is not getting anywhere near the type of opportunity that Justin Jefferson is getting. Which means if Aiyuk was getting that type of opportunity like Jefferson is, what would Aiyuk's numbers be? And how different would people be looking at Aiyuk? Right now, people would agree that Aiyuk is a top, top 5, 10 receiver in the game. Definitely top 10. But what if he was getting the type of opportunity that Jefferson gets in the Minnesota offense out in San Francisco? Would we be talking about Aiyuk as the second best receiver, the third best receiver? Would some people argue that he's better than Justin Jefferson? It'd at least be a conversation. But he's not getting that opportunity with the Niners. Now, there's two sides to this. One, you could argue he could, should, and would be much more productive. Very good football player, has made the most of the opportunities he's received in this offense. But if they threw the football more, he'd get more targets, and with more targets, he'd have more productivity. It's a 2 + 2 = 4 situation. And you could also argue that if you're a team like the Patriots and you're looking for a wide receiver one, and if Aiyuk is available, if you're willing to pay the price asset-wise, which I would not give up a first-round pick, but if you're willing, if San Francisco is open to the idea of taking a second and a later-round pick, as David mentioned earlier in the podcast, if they're willing to do that, if you're the Patriots, you're more prone to make that move when you're looking at these numbers, right? Because you're saying to yourself, man, if we had Brandon Aiyuk, we'd be throwing the football to him more than San Francisco is. Because the Niners, of course, they have George Kittle, Deebo Samuel. They just drafted Ricky Pearsall. They have Run CMC, who plays a huge factor in the pass game. So if you're the Patriots, you're looking at that and you're saying, wait a minute, Aiyuk in the last year and a half is getting 6.5 targets a game. Man, if we had Aiyuk, we'd be throwing the football to that guy 10, 11 times a game. Can you imagine what he would do if he was getting 10 to 11 targets per game? He'd be catching over 100 footballs. He'd have, 16, 17, 1,800 yards. He'd be that explosive. And that would be pushing you to make more of an aggressive move for an Aiyuk because of those numbers. And you also would have to pay him. And if you're Brandon Aiyuk, you're looking at this, you're saying, look, I'm as good as any receiver in the game. You guys just aren't throwing the football to me as much. I deserve to be paid like a Justin Jefferson based off of my production versus my opportunity. I deserve that kind of bank. The other side is the San Francisco side. Before I get to that, like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review. But the Niners could argue, and the Patriots could also look at it a different way. You could look at Brandon Aiyuk and say, well, yes, he doesn't get as much opportunity as Justin Jefferson, but that's because there are so many weapons in the 49ers offense. And those weapons help Aiyuk produce like he does. Because they have Run CMC running the football. That opens up the passing game. Because they have George Kittle and Deebo Samuel. The attention of the defense is spread thin. The more weapons you have, the more likelihood Aiyuk is going to go off. So you could argue the other side. You could also argue that Kyle Shanahan's scheme and his play calling helps Aiyuk play at a higher level than he would play anywhere else. Kyle Shanahan versus Alex Van Pelt. You're taking Kyle Shanahan. San Francisco weapons versus the Patriots weapons. Absolutely taking San Francisco's weapons. So San Francisco could argue back at Aiyuk and say, we appreciate what you do. And yeah, if you had more opportunity, you would likely be more productive, Brandon. But let's not overlook the fact that your productivity for us is helped exponentially by what we have built as a team. If we don't have Christian McCaffrey, if we don't have Deebo, if we don't have Kittle, you don't have the opportunities of being as open as you've been. So that's the pushback. If you're the Patriots, you could look at the numbers and you could say, okay, this is what Brandon Aiyuk could do with more opportunity. But then you look at the other side of the coin and you say, yeah, but we don't have Deebo. We don't have Kittle. We don't have Ricky Pearsall coming in. We don't have Christian McCaffrey. We don't have that offensive line. So there's two sides to the story. And that really makes you understand the tough situation the Niners are in. Because I'm sure the Niners love Aiyuk. And I'm sure they want to keep Aiyuk. And I'm also sure they believe that he is a number one guy. But are you willing to pay him Justin Jefferson money when you also know he's been helped by the players that are with him in that offense? Is he worth top of the market money with your situation specifically? If you're the Niners, you could say, hey, if Ricky Pearsall pops, we could keep Debo and George Kittle for another year or two, continue to draft weapons, and we might not have to pay Aiyuk that money that he wants. Because San Francisco believes in their system, they believe in the scheme, they believe in the other players within this offense. So Aiyuk could be arguing, hey, man, with more opportunity, I'd be as good as Justin Jefferson. Give me Justin Jefferson money. San Francisco could be arguing, we understand and we love you, but we also look at the other players that we've put on this football team and our scheme and Kyle's play calling, and we think that has helped you an awful lot, Brandon. So can we meet in the middle? That's the conversation. And that's why I think this negotiation is pretty difficult. Marilyn, great job on 98.5 last night. I listened for a bit while we talked about the new kid on the season, a bit about Cooper possibly being on the market. Thank you, Marilyn. I appreciate the comment and the compliment. Had a lot of fun. First hour on 98.5, I think it was a little bit rough. Hadn't done a solo show on radio, doing headlines. I haven't done that in quite a while, well over a year. So I had to get my footing. I felt like as the second hour kicked in, things got much better and much more comfortable. Had fun last night. Again, back on Sunday, 2 p.m., 5 p.m. on 98.5. So we'll see if Brandon Aiyuk becomes available, truly available. The Niners and Aiyuk reportedly had a good meeting this week. I think the Niners want to keep him. But I also think Aiyuk wants a lot of money. And you could argue that both ways if you're San Francisco. You could argue that Aiyuk is the future of that offense. You're going to build around him. Debo's aging out. Eventually you move on from him. Kittle has taken a lot of wear and tear. The way he plays, the position he plays, he's going to age out. And you've got Aiyuk and Ricky Pearsall as your 1 and 2 moving into the future. Or you could look at it, hey, we've got a coach who has a great scheme, is a very good play caller. We've got talent. We can add talent whenever we want through the draft. We don't have to bend backwards to make sure that Aiyuk is happy. Interesting situation, but he might be better than you think. All right, don't forget, like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review. Everybody go outside. Enjoy the weather today. It's going to be absolutely gorgeous. Have a great weekend. I'll talk to you on Sunday at 98.5. Until then, don't forget, next week, no podcasts. Starting July 8th, Monday, Patriots only, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 11 a.m. until, I guess, July 8th on this pod. I'll talk to you. It's the Nick Cattle Show.